Hey, welcome back to the Odd Shift Podcast. Today's guest is an individual who has helped thousands of people rewire their minds for success. There's a way that we all process, think, and do things. For example, if I put a prop in front of us right now, maybe the dog comes in the house, someone's wired to be afraid of the dog because of past experiences, where someone's wired to love the dog, right? It's all the wiring. But if you can rewire the way you see or view and experience things, your life can be vastly different. And he's actually gone from himself, a person that's $92,000 to $98,000 in debt, to becoming a multi-seven-figure CEO and serving 30,000+ people across the world to help them be able to rewire their minds to have success in whatever area they choose for life. Today, we dive through the Success GPS, and he talks about that whole kind of framing, also his story of what he went through, and then also how it's tied to some other people's experiences of understanding where they're at, where they need to go, and really what the missing piece is for so many human beings. So if you want to find out how to rewire yourself for success, today is the episode for you to listen to. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Yes, we're back with another episode, another great guest. This person happens to be a friend. He also was a client. He's a great human being who has amassed a great deal of success through the ways that I think we all should do, which is by serving at a high level, but also at the same time do it with heart, man. He's a great human being who shows up for his wife and his daughter. Like, that's a priority to him. So the person you're listening to today is a man after my own heart in the ways of how he lives his life. So bring to the show, Brad, man. How are you, Mr. Bizjack?
Doing fantastic, Mr. Trucks. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. I get to talk to you today, bro. You know, you can't be in a bad mood. I get to talk to Mr. Bizjack, hanging out in this. Just you guys know, he's in his new house. It's a beachfront house. If you go and call it lakefront house. I don't know what it is. He hasn't yet gotten skinny dipping. I would have already been in there with my balls out. But anyways, I think we can get away with that.
We'll see. We'll see if any negative reviews come in.
We'll see. Well, if I go at night, nobody's seeing me anyways.
Yeah.
All right. So let's dive into this. Oh, pun intended. So I always start the podcast with this. It's gonna be a fun one. I don't even know where this all of a sudden happened. Let's say that I'm walking around town. I happen to be in Illinois, where you live, and I sit down next to this cool guys. You turn and you start talking to me for no reason whatsoever. In your opinion, why should I listen to you?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question before. And I think if I was in that situation, it would be more of me listening to you and hearing your story, what's going on in your life. And maybe that's the key. Maybe it's empathy. Maybe it's a deep understanding of trying to put myself in someone else's shoes and see what they're going through with the desire to serve. From a credibility perspective, if someone's trying to create success in their life, I think one of the reasons that actually allows me to talk to people is that for years and years and years, I struggled. For years, I was in a place where I was overworked, underpaid, dealing with significant amounts of debt. And no matter what I tried to do to get through that, nothing ever seemed to work. And it was when I started what we're going to talk a lot about today, that's where things started to take off. So, so if we had a conversation at a coffee shop, which there's not many around here because I live in rural Illinois.
There you go. We're considering doing that. We're thinking about moving to the middle of nowhere in the cuts. Like, we might have to do that. But not in Illinois, because I don't like it where it's that cold. That'd be crazy.
It does get cold. I
hear this, man. But I like this. This is good, because I think at the end of the day, I always want to hear people's minds. I think you cover the two bases that are most important to me, is hearing one side, how you serve people, then two, like your credibility part, because that is huge, right? People go, okay, well, why should I listen to this human being? And obviously, you've gone from being thousands, like almost $100,000 in debt, to being a multi-seven-figure CEO, and impacting lives and helping people rewire. But you can only do what you've done yourself. You can only teach what you have an experience with. So, you mind sharing kind of your journey of we'll call it that process that you went through in that window? Now, you don't got to go back to like your childhood, like back when I was in my father's body. Don't do all that. But take me to the point of like,
you say
I don't know what's going on with me today. You're that mad?
You say father's body?
Hey, so you're getting a peek at my mind. I don't know if it's because it's early, but my brain it does a lot of odd things. I feel like it's crazy. Anyway, so let's go back to the point in time when you're sitting there going, all right, I got this situation of I have a wife, and man, I got to find a way to make this money, or else, this is this. I know what that feels like as a husband. I've been there, unfortunately. What do you have to go through journey-wise to get to where you're at now?
Yeah, man, I was in a place where got a job out of college thinking like I need to reverse this debt. I wanted financial freedom. That's what I wanted for my family. I wanted security. But deep down, what I think I really wanted was to be the breaking point of mediocrity in my history. I wanted
Uh,
to outrun my past. I wanted
yeah.
to have a feeling like I was chasing after something
Hmm.
instead of running away from something. And so I found online business. And for me, that was the ticket. I was like seeing all
Gotcha.
these stories of success, inspiration, not to mention all the finances and all that stuff. And I wanted that. And
Hmm.
so I dove into that, but there was just a problem with it. Everything I tried didn't seem to work. I would read the books, I'd listen to the podcasts, I'd put in the work, but it didn't seem to work for me.
Yeah.
And I was in this place where I was relying on what I call toxic positivity, where I pretended everything was fine on the outside, but on the inside I was struggling. And I never allowed myself to feel my emotions. And I never allowed myself to actually process them and find a new meaning to what I was going through. And my mentor at the time told me, like, dude, you need a mindset coach because what you're doing right now, it ain't working. And I'm like, but I'm $92,000 in debt. I can't afford a coach. And she
Yeah.
said, you can't afford not to because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And
Mhm.
so I remember maxing out my last credit card, hiring a coach, and I put 6 grand on the card that I didn't have. Now I'm
Mhm.
$98,000 in debt. And on our very first call, she said something to me that changed my life forever. I was telling her how I'm trying all the things, I'm putting myself out there, I'm doing the work. It's seeming like it's working for everyone else, but it's not working for me. What's going wrong? And she said, Brad, you're so attached to success that you're missing the whole point. You're under the impression that you shouldn't be where you are right now. She's like, Brad, business success and money isn't going to make you happy. It's learning to rewire your mind and be happy that will lead you to success. That's
Mhm.
what you need to focus on first. And that changed my life in that moment. And I went all in on studying that. And I bought a ticket to a conference that was focused on limiting belief work. And so I got the ticket, got the airplane ride, got the hotel. And I
Mhm.
remember in the months leading up to that event, I got fired from my job. Now, keep in
Mhm.
mind, I'm 98K in debt, no
Yeah.
income,
Yeah.
no savings. And
Mhm.
I remember going to that event, and the transformation I went through at that event was all about rewiring your mind. It was
Mhm.
all about changing the subconscious programming going on behind the scenes. And from that event, and what now I teach all my clients, we've went on to obviously pay off the debt, retire my wife, create a very successful business serving people all over the world. But
Mhm.
most importantly, I realized that it was rewiring your mind and putting your happiness and your fulfillment and appreciation and reverence for life first.
Yeah.
That's what leads to success. And so that's kind of a little bit of a backstory of where it all came
It's a
from, but
good,
it
it's
came
a
from
good back of
struggle.
a backstory. But I think
Yeah.
that the thing is, like, my goal today is going to be devil's advocate to it. Not that I don't
Mm.
agree, because I do agree with all these things. It's the crazy part. But I want to be in the headspace of the person who is, because when you're in that environment, you're in that environment. A fish doesn't know it's in water, right? People are just sitting there and they're funky. So how does somebody go, look, it sounds good, be happy, and then things come, but I can't be happy when I can't pay bills and the stress of, the car note, I might lose my house. How do I find in that moment a space to be happy? Is it redesigning the conversation? Is it new environment of people? Is it going to an event? Like, what do you think is a key for someone to at least kickstart that journey?
I can definitely go through strategy, but I think what's more important is to take a look at what people think that will bring them, right? If you're in a place of financial struggle and you ask yourself, what will more money bring you? And most people would say peace of mind, freedom, whatever
Mm.
it is. My
Less
follow up
stress, yeah.
question to that would be, well, whoever took peace of mind from you? No one took that from you. No one took freedom from you. No one took the ability to find appreciation in life from
Mm-hmm.
you. And
Mm-hmm.
what most people do is they think my circumstances should be different, right? I
Mm-hmm.
should have more money. I should have a bigger business. I should have a happier life. And I always joke that they're shooting all over themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they think they should be in this different place.
Mm-hmm.
But the longer you reject your existing circumstances, you miss the lesson that will help you break through them. I'm a big believer in what a man named Scott Harris taught me called feathers, bricks, and trucks, where life will dust you with a little feather because life's rigged in your favor. It wants you to win. And so we'll dust you with a little feather trying to teach you a lesson. But most people are like, I don't have time for this right now. So they dust off the feather. And so what life does is like, dude, trucks, I gotta get your attention. And so it writes a note and it ties that note around a brick and it throws that brick through your living room window. Glass shatters everywhere. And what most people make the mistake of doing is saying that glass shouldn't have shattered. That
Mm-hmm.
happened to me. Instead of seeing the note that's sitting right there in the living room with the lesson. See, most people don't realize that problems are just gifts that happen to be wrapped in pain so that you pay attention. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you keep on doing that over and over and over again, all of a sudden your house has no windows and you're looking around at all the other neighbors and you're like, wait, their windows are intact. This isn't fair for me. They don't have it as hard as I do. My situation is different. And so life's like, dude, I got to get your attention because you're not seeing the lesson here. And so then life likes to take a can of red paint, put it on the front of a Mack truck, blare its horn, run you over, you turn and look and see that lesson. And you wake up 2 weeks later in the hospital and you have a choice. You can either choose to see the lesson and learn the lesson that life's been trying to teach you, or you can say the truck shouldn't have hit me. And most people in life make the choice of blaming their circumstances, saying it should be different. I believe that all of life is cause and effect. And most people think their circumstances cause their emotions. My personal belief is that your emotions cause you to take action to change your circumstances. And so if you are obsessed with the effect of life, which is your circumstances, your business, your money, your time, whatever it is, then you forget the cause. And the cause is how you're feeling, how you're living each day, the way that you're operating. And if you forget the cause, you can't influence the effect. And most people don't realize that. And that's why they end up in the exact same spot. And so it'd be easy to take a look at this and say, well, what should I tactically do? It's more about the meaning that you are giving your circumstances, in my opinion, because with a new meaning, you have a whole new life. And yeah, you can go to events, you can read books, but start there, because my personal belief is you can't really shift your life very much until you learn how to appreciate the life you have.
That's true. If you don't have any gratitude there, the energy you come forth with is going to be difficult. In my head, it always look as like the chicken and the egg kind of thing. Is it the situation or circumstance that creates the emotion that creates the circumstance? And as opposed to being like arbitrary, like we literally have, and so we have no idea if it's chicken or egg, I go, no, I'm going to make it the egg. Like I'm going to go ahead and say that my emotional pretty much the thing that adjusts my circumstance. Because it is true. There's this guy named Turbo. Remember Gladiator? Back in the American Gladiator?
Yeah.
So Turbo was one of the guys. I had him on the podcast, and he had this statement. First place I heard, he says, "Actions end suffering."
Well, I love that.
And it's true. Like some action that ends in suffering. Now, if you take the action and it's subpar, or it's with poor energy, it won't end the suffering. It's going to be the right action that ends that suffering. And so what you're saying is like, if you have that fuel from a place of like, look, I'm grateful for the life I got. I feel joyous, man. I do have a house. I do have some food in the fridge. I do have a person that loves me. I got what I need, right? No one took my freedom. No one took my choice, right? Let me go do differently. Then you actually take these bold actions that create what you're actually wanting. I like this, man. So you do this, you obviously navigate this journey, you have the success in life. But I think there's one thing we haven't talked to, and we had mentioned this beforehand. It's like, all right, what about the idea that maybe I'm chasing something that doesn't light me up? Because sometimes we may gauge ourselves and how we feel based on the success and the direction. But if I don't have this love or desire to go in the direction, it's half-hearted. It's half actions, which means half outcomes or less. What do you have to say about the realm of like setting an idea or goal that's really, really clear that I'm almost palpably connected to?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, man. I think there's the old adage, right? I think it's biblical, without vision, you shall perish, right? And what most people make the mistake of doing is they don't have a compelling vision of the future because they've been hurt so badly from different efforts or attempts that most people have such an attachment to how things go that they think that their worth is somehow tied to an outcome. And so what they'll do is they'll shrink their goals down to be more realistic. Well, my belief, and Will Smith said this, realism is the fastest traveled road to mediocrity, right? If you are realistic in your dreams, I'm not saying don't be realistic in your amount of time per day or what actions you take, but when you're realistic in your dreams, they won't actually excite you. And so you'll start setting your goals based on the past instead of what you actually want. And you'll start rationalizing, well, that's all I can take on right now. That's all I can handle right now. I think it was you that taught me like the outlet metaphor, right? That you have your family plugged in, you have your business plugged in, but you think that to plug in your health, you have to take out one plug and plug in another one, right? And a lot of people live their life that way. And so they try to be realistic when they're setting their dreams. And what they find is that they don't hit these small goals. So they think I should go even smaller. Well, have you ever considered the reason you don't hit the small goals is because you don't care about them? I think that the most successful examples on earth are kids. Kids are so successful, and there's a reason for this, because up until about the age of 12, they'll want to be Spider-Man and an astronaut and the president all at the same time. And so they'll run into the living room in their Spider-Man undies with an astronaut helmet on and give their presidential address, right? And there's this creativity, there's this energy, there's this passion behind it. But then right about the age of 12, they're told to sit down, shut up, get an A+, or you're a failure. They're taught to be perfect. And perfection is the lowest standard you could ever set as a human being because it guarantees pain. You either won't start in your dreams because you don't know how, you'll tiptoe around the edges of your dream and try not to fail and avoid failure, which failure is the only way to thrive. And the worst part is that nothing you do will ever feel like enough. And so you'll bounce from to-do list to to-do list, peak to peak, and it feels like you're chasing a ghost. And so what we need to do is take a page out of the book for these little kids and ask, what's the purpose of setting a compelling vision? It's not to hit it. I miss like 95% of the goals that I set because the purpose of setting a goal is not the certainty of attainment. It's to become a new person. If you ask yourself what you really, really want, not what do you think you can attain, what do you really want? Then all of a sudden, and I'll give an example and a story of this in just a second, then all of a sudden your energy increases. When your energy increases, your creativity increases. When you do that, you take more bold action. When you take more bold action and you're in a better state of mind, you take more risks. When that happens, you put yourself in situations where you have to learn. Because like you said, there's a difference between knowledge and knowing. Knowledge is just consuming education. Knowing is you've done it. And so you put yourself in this place to actually create something. And even if you don't hit that goal, you are so much further along than you would have ever been before. I'll give you an example. In my life, I remember talking to a coach I had way back in the day. And back then, our business was doing about $25,000 a month in revenue. At that time, I thought, fantastic, amazing, that's great. I was very grateful for it. And I was telling him how my big goal this year is I want to get to $30,000 a month. And he said something really, really interesting to me. He said, why would you set such crappy goals? And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? A 20% increase in revenue? That's fantastic. And he's like, no, you're missing the whole point. Why would you ever set a goal you know you can hit? And that blew my mind. He said, you need to live in the feelings of your actual wishes. But there was a problem. At that point in my life, my wife was like 9 months pregnant. And I remember what he said. And I remember him challenging me and saying, what actually excites you? What actually moves you? What actually sets your soul on fire? I call it a butt puckering goal now. What actually gets you going? And it came out of me. I got the passion sweats. It was $100,000 a month at that stage. And I was like, yes, let's freaking go. Right.
Yeah.
And that was going on. So we just had Lily. It was a traumatic childbirth. They were in the hospital for a couple of weeks. All that went down. But I kept remembering what John said. And it was live in the feelings of your wishes. And one day, a couple months later, and the reason for living in the feelings of your wishes is because it changes your energy, right? One day, a couple months later, I'm in the shower and I get this crazy idea for how to serve thousands of people with our program instead of just one at a time. And that idea ended up doing $800,000 in the following 6 months. Then went on to do $1 million in 5 days. And it scaled from there. I'm not sharing that to impress anyone or posture. It's to show the point that if I would have set a realistic, safe, attainable goal of $30,000 a month, I would have never been in the emotional place or excitement to set a dream that caused me to think differently, to take bolder action and put myself out there. So we need to let go of this idea of my dreams or my goals need to be realistic. I think that's a way to end up in mediocrity. Instead, it's what goal can I set that actually sets my soul on fire and excites me?
I agree. I say all the time, you cannot have a dream that is above your current identity.
Ooh.
Because there's certain things that, you can't have a dream that's above the current identity. Because think about it, if your current identity won't do the things, write that down. You can take that one and use it, bro.
I'm going to steal that from you.
Hey, take it, run with it. It's fine with me. Give me a little bit of credit. I'll take it. But the idea, I notice like in the world of what I'm doing, I have a lot of people that want to accomplish great, cool things. But then I go, hey, you have to do this, this, and this. And they go, oh, I don't do that. I go, it's interesting because a person that has what you said you want, well, they do that without even thinking about it. So if you're telling me that you won't do that, then you can't have that. And so that separation for me has always kind of been the big thing to anchor for people and go, look, we have to start thinking about the kind of person you're going to be because that's more important than the kind of things you want to have. Because if you do happen to luck out and attain it, you will not sustain it. The goal is to achieve it and then be able to sustain it. So can I attain it? Can I sustain it and be able to do more beyond that? And so you're talking about that clear picture. Now, while you had this situation where you said, I had this vision of 30,000 and then I pushed it up higher, how did you go through like the idea of like, why was it a monetary thing? Was there anything like at that point, did they give you a framing of the human? As a person listening to you, I want to be able to have somebody go, oh, I see how he set that goal and why he set that goal for what it was. Because I think a lot of people grab the world's version or Brad's version of what success is and rarely set their own scale. And then they don't fall in love with it. Like if I was with your wife, I wouldn't love her like I love my wife. You might love your wife, but it'd be weird if I did, you know? So the idea is like, how do I have this thing that I love that might be in the same direction, but not the exact same thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of people think that their definition of success needs to be the same as someone else. And that's like, you'll see someone achieve like a financial goal. Well, you might not want that at this stage in your life right now. And what's important to ask yourself is, are you conceptually setting a goal based on what societal conditioning or what someone in your life or a mentor is telling you should want? Or are you listening to your head or are you listening to your heart? Because your heart will tell you what you actually want. And it might be that you want to work less and spend more time with your kids. It might not be a monetary thing. But for me at that stage of my life, to answer your question, it was something where I wanted to provide choice to my girls. That was the driver for me. And so money was the physical representation of that choice. But I remember growing up in a place where choice wasn't there. There was always limitation. And so at that stage of my life, I was always trying to outrun that. And that's since changed. I have different motivations and intentions now. But that's where my intention was at that stage of my life. I wanted to create a life for my family that I never got to have. And I think Dean Graziosi talks about this with the 7 levels of why, right? Identifying why you really want something. For me, it was to show that I'm worthy of creating a life and that's beautiful and providing for my family in a way that wasn't there for me. But I think what's very important is that we don't just set goals based on monetary things. That is an important part of life, but we need to ask ourselves, what does our heart want? What does our heart really want? And here's my belief. Every single person knows what they want. But what's happening is they're living in fear, and that fear is causing them to live in their head and cloud their judgment of what they think is possible. So they won't let their heart expand. And when you don't let your heart expand, you feel regret, you feel numbness, you feel tension inside. And you talk a lot about identity. And it's really interesting. My friend Jim has this amazing metaphor. He's like, identity is kind of like a hermit crab. And I was like, huh? What are you talking about? The hermit crabs are fascinating little creatures. They grow and they expand to reach the layer of their shell, right? So shell meaning ego, right? Everyone's greatest obstacle, ego. Maybe you taught me that. I don't know if that's what you taught me, but someone
that's my favorite one. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everyone's greatest obstacle. So ego.
Yeah.
But the identity of this hermit crab goes to the shell. And you have a choice in that moment, right? You can either choose to stay in that shell and choose numbness or a dull, achy pain and not expand your identity, or you can leave the shell. You can be seen. You can be vulnerable, and the barracudas might get you, right? But that's why it's important to surround yourself with other amazing people that get your back through that process, so you can go and find a bigger shell and expand that shell and allow your identity to expand. But a lot of people never venture beyond that comfort zone because they aren't clear as to why they're doing it, and the reason why they're doing it needs to be in alignment with what their heart really, really wants. There's a calling and a pull in every single person listening to this. And the longer you deny that pull, the more numb you will feel. You have to listen to that. There's a reason it's on your heart. And if you deny it any longer, you're denying your soul from expansion. It's time to listen to it.
What if listening to it causes pain though? Because
it will.
And may not necessarily. I don't think it's always the pain of realization of where you're not at. And I'm just talking through a point of trying to be the person who's going like, I don't like this guy, Brad. That's what I'm thinking. So just so you know, I'm thinking of that, so I can help you serve the people who really need to hear what you're talking about. Because I thoroughly believe in this. There's someone that goes like, yeah, but I got to deal with my mom and my cousin and my wife may not agree with me. She's not gonna let me quit my job. And like, how does someone lean into chasing something that their heart's calling to without blowing their life up?
That's a fantastic question. So a lot of people resent their existing circumstances, like we talked about earlier. 2 things. Let me make a note so I don't forget to say this. Number 1, the first, from a conceptual perspective, if you are setting a vision and expecting other people to support that vision from the get-go, you're out of your mind. You are a visionary. Visionary means you go first, right? It is your idea. And then eventually people will hop on board. My business. My wife told me it was the stupidest idea in the world. and now she's very, very happy that we have this business. Now, no judgment to Janice. She's an incredible human being. And her objective at that point was certainty and security. And so she saw someone going after their dream, threatening her security and safety. And that's what she was trying to do, was protect me. So it wasn't that she didn't support me. She was trying to keep us safe. So the intention was pure. But the point is, that you are a visionary. So you go first. Other people are not going to support it. If you're expecting that support right away, then you're out of your mind. You need to take that leap of faith. Now, if you are in a place where you have kids to support and a family to support while you're trying to build these dreams, is it the most responsible choice to go say, hey, I'm leaving the only income source of my family and I'm going to let my kids starve so I can go build this? I don't know about that. This is my personal belief. I believe in providing for my kids. Now, here's the psychology piece behind it that can serve you. Most people have a dream or a calling on their heart, but because they think they shouldn't be in their existing role, their job, whatever it is, their career, they bring a negative energy to that role. And I'll give you an example of this. I used to work in merchandising for Abercrombie & Fitch. I hated it. No judgment, No judgment to anyone that works in fashion retail. I hated it. It wasn't my cup of tea. And every day I had this dream of building a business. And I was so resentful of the fact that I had to go to work. And I think a lot of people that have dreams see their existing ways of providing as wrong. And I was the guy that was negative going to the office. I was that toxic energy. And so when I got home, all I wanted to do was grab a beer, sit on the couch and relax because I had no energy left to create. But what's interesting, though, is that that energy was driven through the lens of personal significance. What am I getting out of life instead of what am I giving to life? And that's an important distinction. What am I getting out of life versus what am I giving to life? And so a lot of people will do this. They'll say, well, this job isn't fair. This isn't a place that I should be. So they bring a negative energy to it. Yeah. And that drains their energy. But if you connect the contribution behind what you do while you're providing for your family, for example, instead of saying, oh, I'm in merchandising for Abercrombie & Fitch, I could say, I get to help young men feel confident in their most impressionable times in their life. And if I were to connect with that sense of contribution, that would energize me throughout the day. If I'm energized throughout the day, I feel proud of myself. My ego, or not my ego, my self-esteem goes up. And then I have more energy when I get home to build the dream. And so it just goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, to not make your circumstances wrong. I do believe that if it's your dream, your calling, go after it with everything you can. But I also believe in being responsible and providing for your kids.
Yeah, it's being strategic about it, man. It's because I guess the way I look at it, it's almost a weird kind of connection. But I go, all right, well, you didn't chase your dream. You chased something else. The thing you chased, you built your cage. It's almost like weight loss. People go, man, it's so hard to lose weight. I was like, yeah, but think about how easy and how much work you put into going in the wrong direction. Right? Mm-hmm. If you think about all the food you ate and how it was good, and you get to this point, you go, man, I'm not a fan of this. Yeah, but you built your own cage. It's going to take sometimes more work and more difficult work to backtrack out of it. So if you're in a career, in a situation, like there's going to be some different sacrifice you have to do that doesn't feel comfortable, but it'll always be worth it at the backside of it. If we were talking about earlier, like the idea of identity and stepping into something, I do know there's just this piece that at least I've noticed with my clients, and maybe you've noticed with yours as well, is they will latch onto that identity so tight. And it'll almost happen instinctually, subconsciously when something arises. It's like this is hard. Whoop, I'm going back to this old place of where they go back in that hermit crab shell and they go, oh, I don't like this show. Why am I here? I don't even realize they're there. How do you talk to that kind of the person who says, I want to change, Brad, I'm going to do it. And they start doing it. Something gets hard and they go, whoop, and they fly back to the old self.
That's a fantastic question. I love this. And so Tony Robbins has a quote that I love so much. And it's, the strongest force in the human personality is to stay consistent with who you already think you are.
True.
And it's such a powerful force. Identity is everything because it's a belief about who you believe you are. If you believe you are an athlete, your actions will follow differently than if you believe that you are big boned, right? And so that's just one example of a belief, but your actions follow whatever you believe about yourself. And so you've heard of confirmation bias, right? You will seek out peer groups and you will seek out sources of information that confirm what you already believe. These are just limiting beliefs about yourself, right? Here's the thing about limiting beliefs. The only crappy part about them is that, number one, you believe them, so you think they're true. And number two, you're unlikely to see them. And so what I always talk to my clients about is disassociating from the ego. The ego, the old identity keeping you safe, right? What I like to do is give that a name. I call mine Mr. Dickies. And so that's the name.
Can I ask why is that his name?
It just, I don't know, it just felt like it's a good pattern interrupt, right? Just his name.
It's a restaurant called Dickies. Anyways, it's a definite pattern interrupt. You just interrupt my pattern. Keep going. Mr. Dickies.
Mr. Dickies. So it's a pattern interrupt, right? And so if someone's saying, I always go back here, and they're almost looking at it like something's wrong with them, but my response to them is, of course you do. Of course you go back. That's what you've known for years. And so if I were to have my underwear in the top left drawer, and my wife being like, hey, I want to reorganize the house, decides I'm going to take Brad's underwear and put it in the bottom right drawer, and I'm going to put my intimates in the top left. Well, if that's the case, the next day I get out of the shower, I'm going to put my undies on, right? So I'm going to go to the top left drawer and open it up. And I'm going to look for my underwear there and be like, I definitely don't wear that. And I'll be like, oh yeah, Janice told me it's in the bottom right drawer. Well, the next day, what's going to happen? I'm going to go to that top left drawer again. Next day, top left drawer. Next day, I'm going to touch the handle, be like, hang on, Janice moved my undies. And they're in the bottom right drawer. Then the next day, I'm going to be walking over there and I'm going to remember while I'm mid-step that they're in the bottom right. And then the next day, I'm going to go directly to the bottom right drawer. The whole point is it's conditioning. It's just like a dog peeing outside. You got to train your dog over time to do it. And so when someone is like, I go back to this place, my response is, of course you do. because that's all you've known until now, which is why the compelling vision is so important, so that you have a reason for change. Without a reason, you're not going to have an answer. Reasons come first, answers come second, right? So you need that compelling vision. But what I like to do when that comes up is, instead of self-punishment, I disassociate from that limiting pattern, right? And so let's say that I'm on a plane, and so planes have this amazing guidance system. When they get out of alignment, they get back on track, out of alignment, back on track. But humans, when they get out of alignment, they beat themselves up and they end up in a completely different place.
Yeah.
Instead of just disassociating from that and realigning and saying, okay, I'm going to notice instead of self-judge, and I'm going to realign. And so I started to give this limiting voice a name, Mr. Dickies, to one, interrupt my pattern, but two, to realize that the ego is not me. The ego is not me. The ego is not my spirit. The ego is trying to keep me safe. And if I give it a name and I realize it's not me, then all of a sudden I can realign faster, because I'm not in this state of self-judgment. And so I started doing that whenever that would come up, and I'd slip back into old patterns, be like, Mr. Dickies, what you doing? I got this, right? And it sounds silly, it sounds ridiculous, but it's a pattern interrupt, and it gets you back on track. So the whole point of this is, when you're in this state of changing, your ego will fight like hell to keep you where you are. It will. And that's okay. That's part of the growth process. But the compelling vision of the future needs to be more powerful than the inertia of the present. And if you're willing to go after that big dream and realign, not beat yourself up, and just notice that you're out of alignment instead of punish when you're out of alignment, then you'll notice that you start to recondition and realize that the underwear is actually in the bottom right drawer, and you can end up expanding that identity.
I agree. Then it becomes a new thing of how you function and operate. And I like that directional kind of angle to it, right? Saying, hey, I'm not going to go back to this space. I've actually in times talked to the idea of charting a path in the direction of we'll call it identity that you aspire to be. And it's more so just like a question we ask ourselves. I always had this thing is, if your hero followed you around for a day, what would they say? It's one piece of it. If I was to have somebody that I admire that, hey, come watch my day, would they be like, hey, great job? Or like, hey, what are you doing? Right? There's one of two things. But then also in the moments of difficulty, people go, ask what your higher self would do. And there's actually studies that show, scientific studies that go, you can't do that. Like you don't really know that person yet. So I go, well, what if I just took a part of a person's identity? Maybe I like how someone parents or someone, how they show up in their marriage. I go, all right, in this situation, how would Mr. Shiny Shoes do? Right. And I can ask that question. Here's the interesting thing. What Mr. Shiny Shoes would do, I'd probably go, okay, it's cool, but it's not comfortable. Like there are people, like for example, The Rock. Rock's guy that gets down, does things, works out. I go, okay, cool. Well, in situations, I know if I said, well, 4:00, the alarm goes off, would The Rock get out of bed? And the answer that I know is the answer that is one that, yes, he would. Now I have to go, do I want to do that? I don't want to, but if I want what he has, that's what I got to do, right? So we can kick it out to an identity or someone you know what they might do, that you aspire to be in a position. If you ask the question, what would that person do? It'll provide for you an answer you may not like, but it'll actually inform what your next step could or should be in the next direction. So it's different, kind of like the opposite side of pulling you in a direction sometimes, opposed to pulling you or pushing you away from the idea of like, I should do something different. It's a good question to ask. So let's talk to this idea of the goal, the person. I know we talked about the whole idea with the plane. You mentioned that. What do the planes use? Another something here I want to unpack, and I'm leading in that direction if you can't notice already. What do planes use? What do people use nowadays to get from point A to point B that you believe is some useful thing we should think through?
When you say what's something people use to get from point A to point B? Can you expand on that? Do you mean?
Yeah. So, I try to pull you in. I guess I'm not smart. All right. So there's this thing that we talked about before we got on. You're like, I want to talk to this thing, and it's I'm just to say it's a success GPS. It's your thing. I want to have that. I want to have that conversation now. There we go.
There you go. You can just tell me.
That's how like ladies talk. I did it like how like my wife tells me things sometimes. She beats around the bush, doesn't get right to the point. So I just did that. See, I'm not even good at it. So I should just say that. Hey, Brad, I heard this thing you talk about called success GPS. I think it's a cool thing. Do you mind unpacking more of that for us today?
That is
way better, right?
Way more direct.
Yeah, it works.
He wants me to mind read everyone.
How come you didn't read my mind? Dang it. Golly.
This is a metaphor that I've been working on for a while, and I'm really excited about this because I was on a hiking trip. I go hiking every couple of years with my buddies. We do like a 2-week, big hiking trip. We do like, hike Half Dome and like all this really cool stuff and like the hard hikes, backpack the Grand Canyon, all that. And we were driving from Grand Canyon National Park to Yosemite. And I was in the front seat with my buddy Jim, and Jim had a really profound statement. He was like, And you ever notice how you get the ideas, like the downloads of information when you don't have a pen? And you're like, oh my gosh, there's a framework
think about
here. There's something. Yeah. And so I'm driving from Yosemite or from Grand Canyon to Yosemite. And Jim's like, Brad, these road trips are a lot like success. And I'm like, what do you mean, Jim? He's like, well, if you're not excited about where you're going, why would you want to drive across the country to get there? And I had this download. I'm like, holy cow, success is like Google Maps. It's like Google Maps. Because if you think about what Google Maps needs to get from point A to point B, it needs, number one, a compelling destination, right? Somewhere you want to drive. Maybe it's not compelling for a lot of people, and that's the problem why they always turn around and go home. But let's say that I'm going on a road trip from where I am to, let's say, Yosemite National Park. That's where I want to go. I love the waterfalls. It's like Avatar and Jurassic Park all at the same time. And so I want to go there. But most people will set their road trip destination based on the amount of gas they currently have in the tank. And so what they do is they say, okay, well, I'm going to set a GPS pin 345 miles away. And they end up so I'm in Western Illinois. They end up in a cornfield in the middle of Iowa. No offense to corn, but I'm willing to bet that that's not where you really want to drive to. But most people only set their destination in Google Maps based on the current amount of gas they have in the tank. So they end up driving. They're like, what's the point? Why am I even doing this? So they turn around and go home, or they end up getting there going, that was pointless. And so they're like, I don't want to do this again. So the first piece of this whole framework of 3 pieces is we need the GPS destination to be exciting. We talked a lot about that today, so we don't need to go into that in a lot of detail. But the second piece of this that Google Maps needs is to know exactly where you are, your actual starting point. But most people, because they're trying to meet their need for significance, is they will start to create a story, a disempowering story about where they're at. So let's say that I'm in Western Illinois, and I think that I'm worse off than I actually am. I'm not recognizing the beauty of my life. I haven't seen how far I've come. And I start talking crap about myself, which is what a lot of people do when they're not at their goals. Well, that's like telling GPS that I'm back in Buffalo, New York. No offense to Buffalo. But if I'm in Western Illinois and GPS thinks I'm in Buffalo, New York, and I'm trying to go to Yosemite, Google Maps is going to plot a course. And so what happens is you start driving and Google Maps will say, hey, turn left on Chalmers Street. And you're like, well, where's Chalmers Street? And you feel directionless, you feel hopeless. And so you drive around aimlessly for a little bit and you turn around and go back to everything you've known. And this is what most people do on their path to success. They might have a compelling destination, but their stories are so inflated, stories of self-doubt, stories of self-punishment, stories of beating themselves up, that they go right back to where they were. And so when we align these two things, you have a compelling destination. And actually a second point to your starting point. Some people inflate where they are. Some people say, well, I'm actually in Denver, right? I'm further along, but they're not actually further along. And so Google Maps thinks I'm in Denver. Same thing happens. And they get confused and they feel hopeless. They feel helpless. They go back home. And so let's say that we resolve these two pieces. We have the compelling destination and we have a self-honesty check about where we actually are, the objective view. My business is this size. My income is here. My family life is like this. My body is like this, whatever your actual life is like. And you have data on where you're starting and a compelling destination. Because a great leader knows how it is and they see it better than it is. But then the third step is a great leader makes it better than it is. So let's say you have those two things, you start charting a course. Well, in the beginning, you're going to go through and hit some stoplights and some stop signs. It's going to be a little bit slower, some speed bumps. And it's going to say turn left here, turn right here. And you're going to want to go 70, but the speed limit at that time in your life is going to be 20. And then finally, you're going to break through that city area and you're going to start going a little bit faster. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to notice that you got to stop to pee. But most people build their life around their work instead of their work around their life. And so they never stop to pee. They never stop to get food. And little side anecdote, I did this when I was driving to Dallas. And I literally peed into a portable urinal thinking I was saving myself time. And I would pour it out the window and I literally came right back in the car and I peed on my own face. Geez. And this is what a lot of people do.
My wife, she thinks it's funny. I got this actual little adult pee bag that diaper stuff inside, but you can pee in it while you're driving. And I go, we're going to use it one day. Haven't yet, but I get what you're saying.
You should try it. So most people do that though, and they pour the pee out the window. It actually takes them longer to get back up and running because they never take care of themselves and their own health. And then you're driving and some days it's sunny, some days it's raining. Right? And in that journey, when it's raining, you can still drive. You can still go. And sometimes in that journey, there's going to be a downpour where it's okay to pull over the car. And then you're going to be on this journey and there's going to be ups and downs, right? There's going to be times when you're going across the plains, you're able to floor it. There's some times on your journey where you're going uphill and you need to push down the gas more to maintain the same speed. Then there's times in your journey when you're going down the other side of the hill and you can let off the gas and go faster. And then you're going to get to a really interesting point where you need gas. You need to refill. You need a coach, you need a mentor, you need some sort of personal development seminar, whatever it is. Investing in that gasoline is incredibly important so you can keep going on your destination. And you're going to keep going across the country. And one day you're going to get to an interesting point where a construction zone happens. And you go from a 4-lane superhighway down to 1 lane that's bumper to bumper traffic. And you have a choice in that moment on your journey to where you want to be. You can either be pissed off that it's bumper to bumper traffic, or you can put on some T-Swift and have some fun. It's up to you. We're Swifties in this household. And so
no, I'm not. It's okay.
That's all right.
Someone got to do it.
Someone got to do it. And then final piece of this is that you're going to be on this journey and you're going to be thinking, okay, that's the destination that I want. And this is the path that I thought I should be on. And Google Maps is going to have this little flash that comes up and says faster route available. And you have a choice. You can listen to the voice of this is how it was supposed to be, or you can be flexible in your approach and take the faster route that's available. And if you do this whole framework and you have the compelling destination, you're honest about where you're at, and all of this journey is something that you deeply appreciate, you get to that destination and you see the beauty all around you, but you realize that the beauty didn't come from the destination. It came from all of the different things you faced along the way. And when you get there, you arrive and you say, I wonder where I'm going to go next. And then you can set an even cooler destination, cooler road trip that's even further away. And you'll probably get to do it in a faster car. So
I like it.
That's what I've been working on.
Very well done, man. I think there's a little piece I can add to it too, because I talk to the journey and the destination all the time. You can trickle this into the back end. I find that if a lot of people, they don't think about the journey, but if I hate the journey and I show up to a hotel that's beautiful, I'm not just in a better mood because the hotel's beautiful. So if you hated the journey, even getting to the destination, you're not going to be too happy. However, if you love the journey, I can get to my hotel and the room may not be ready. It might be dirty and I go, it's cool. I'll go grab a drink at the bar, hang out with my friends. You're in a good mood. Doesn't matter. But I mean, God forbid you hate the journey and then hate the place you get. It's a horrible trip and that everything sucks. So even the aspect of really having peace along that process of the journey makes life better when you get to the destination, no matter what that destination is shaped from, whatever, when you get there. So I really like that. So it's well structured, well put together. I like the idea of going uphill in the gas and then coming downhill. Yeah, I like that. And then I also tell people that I cannot mess up the plan with my plan.
Ooh, that's so
right?
good.
So you could talk to it in a sense of like, there's this thing I made, like you talked to, but then like, it's my plan. Yeah, but the plan, let's say at a philosophical, spiritual level, even just structurally because the redirect, right? That plan can't work, right? But you can't mess up the true plan just because your plan has to. Because when you do that, you don't get anything right. Everything sucks. And you have that journey where it sucks to get to the destination. So I like the idea of like, take the reroute. It's faster this way. Go see some sights, man. It's much more beautiful. So I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I looked down at the clock and I go, oh, we're at time. Just didn't know we got here. And all that talk about underwear in the drawers. I was like, man, just go outside and skinny dip, bro. One time. Just go get that done.
All right, I'll do it.
Yeah. Just don't film it. That'd be bad. Okay, last two questions. First off, where can I send people to get more of Brad Bizjack, all the information, all that fun stuff that you do?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So obviously on the Instagram, just at Brad Bizjack. But a lot of people starting this journey might have this big conceptual idea of like, wow, this sounds great in theory, but like, you don't understand my situation. And like we talked about, a lot of people have these limiting beliefs about where they are, and that's what keeps them stuck. And so at this stage, I've had the privilege of working with over 30,000 people and have recognized that there are typical limiting beliefs that people have on this journey, that it's their lens of life, their identity, the way that they view the world. And I've identified a few major paradigms that people have. And so I boiled that into a quiz that people can take to find out what their starting point is. That starting point on their GPS, what is that? I call it your unique success archetype. And it's the lens in which you're viewing success. And it will show you your strengths as well as your current limitations that are holding you back from that compelling vision. Or if you're in a place where you're having a hard time creating that compelling vision, you're about to find out why. And so you can find that at quizzes.bradbizjack.com. It's a great place to start, but yeah, either the gram or that quiz will be incredibly helpful for some.
I like it. Quizzes.bradbizjack, just how it sounds, JACK.com. Second question, final question. What promise did God or the Creator make to the world when they created you?
Oh, it's such a great question. What promise did God give the world when they created me?
Hmm?
Hmm. That I'd make people smile. Like that this guy would make people happy, would help people to find a smile in their life, uh, to help people feel like, wow, maybe it isn't as hard as I thought it was. And maybe the pain that I'm experiencing is there for a purpose. And so I believe that I am a vessel for change and helping people to truly see that life is happening for them and not to them. Um, and that I can help people just one little insight can change their entire life. I sign off every single video in my trainings with that. You're only one insight away from a radically different life. And I believe that that's what I put here to do, to help people find that one insight that changes everything.
I like it, man. Well said. I agree. Sometimes just that one little thing that just, it's a thread that pulls apart this, facade of your life that you've built up. You could actually allow yourself to step into the new one, man. So well done. Appreciate you coming on. Those of you guys who are tuned in with us, thank you so much for hanging out. Make sure to go to quizzes.bradbizjack.com, because honestly, you can have all the vision and ideas you want, but if you don't know where you're starting, you might spend a lot of time doing the wrong work and end up in a place you didn't expect to be. So go take the quiz. If there is someone in your life you know needs to hear this, because there are a lot of people that need to hear this, do us a favor, do yourself and them a favor, send this to them. Just share it. A little copy paste, link, whatever, send it out to them, or just put it in your feed somewhere. You never know who's able to scroll, catch it, watch it, and honestly change their life with that single insight we talked about. And outside of that, as always, make the most of your off shift moments so you can make shift happen. It's Anthony Trucks, Brad Bizjack, signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning in to the Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love if you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.